There's two life-changing events that happened in my life in the last 4 years. The first one is when I first met Magatis and Dr. Magatis and Dr. Elena Melu, and they introduced me to the wonderful world of polyphenols and the new ways to measure them, and the many health benefits that can be derived from each one, and together and separately. That changed my life, and I started living in Greece more than Canada. And the next life-changing event is when I met Nicolas Netien. And now I'm living more in Cyprus than Greece. And I'm as excited about meeting Nicolas Netien and enthusiastic about the work that he's doing in agroecology and all of growth management as I was when I first met Magatis and Melu. So these are the two inspirations in my life. Okay, so without further ado, here's Nicolas.
Thank you. That's a big responsibility. Before I start, I would like to thank the organizer, Athan, of course, and Marlene. I would like to also thank everyone who's here, and particularly the people of the governor and the people of Oleo, because you've been inspiration to us. You guys were the pioneers, and thanks to your work that we went that far. And the governor is like taking the worst olive oil of Greece, and one of the worst in the world, and turning into something extraordinary. And the Oleo is to have the guts to, pass that step and identify the olive oil as, nutraceutical and go for that market. Because for the last year also, we were kind of sitting in between two chairs. We were doing food, olive oil for gastronomic purposes, and then pharmaceutical and nutraceutical grade olive oil. And we had lots of debate amongst ourselves in that sense. And finally, I was extremely happy when I first see your new packaging, because it helped us to pass those discussions, and to finally have a clear vision of how we wanted to brand our product. So I came to Cyprus the first time 5 years ago. Just before that, I met my wife in Jordan on the project in greening the desert. And after we met, we went to Australia to finish our training in agroecology. And then we were very excited to come to Greece and set up in Greece, because we thought that this crisis will be an amazing opportunity to promote what we're doing, which is sustainable farming. And we stayed there for about a year. We didn't get many jobs. We did a lot of teaching for young farmers, young people, and stuff like that. And the first one who gave us a job was Michael, George David, which is here. And he told us, I have this little grove in Cyprus. Can you come and do some bit of consulting on it? And we came. My wife was 8 months pregnant, and I will show you what we did the first time. And a year after that, Maya's uncle, George, had bought some more land and had a vision to restore the environment behind his village, which is in the occupied area. It's the village of Petra. And then we moved in full-time at that time. So we've been here 4 years, and we've been making olive oil for 3 years. So prior to that, I had no experience with olive oil. But I knew how to grow plants in a difficult situation. That was my training. I'm an environmental engineer. My first training is waste management, biological waste management, so compost and things like that. So that brought me to soil biology, and then to agriculture. So this is where we are. Sorry. We have a pointer, no? No. Okay. The farm is in the UN zone, just behind the Bay of Morphou. and it's the driest place of Cyprus. We have an average rainfall of 290 millimeter a year. Ah, yeah, okay. So we are just here between Morphu and next to the oldest copper mine still in activity in the world, which is Koyotissa. We are just here. All this place here is in what we call a rain shadow. Because of the mountain and the winds, we have much less rainfall than the rest of Cyprus. This is the land in 2014, so that's before we planted everything. I'm showing this to you because when we do agroecology, and I will explain a little bit more what is agroecology, the first thing we do is look at natural pattern. Because we want to use the natural patterns to design them and to maximize the effect into our design. And the main pattern we have here, it's a classical desert pattern, which is a dendritic pattern here. So it looks like trees. So all these are basically erosion gullies. This land is bare. You see there's very, very little vegetation. There's one tree here, and few bushes. All the rest is just rocks. And every time it rains, the rain gather into those erosion gully and then wash off whatever topsoil is left and goes directly to the sea, has no time to soak in, and we're losing topsoil and water. So our priority was to work with those patterns. So that's the year after, 2 years after, sorry. I will come back into the process that led us to here, but we are working on those patterns. We made a dam, which is a water harvesting dam, and I'll come back to that in a bit, where we're collecting the rain that's falling onto the land, and we're collecting rain from our neighbors' land and their topsoil as well. The farm is in the UN zone, which is a great advantage for us because from 74 to 2003, there was no agriculture, no human activity. That means we don't have any pesticide, and we have very low pests as well because there's no other olive trees around us. So it's much easier for us to deal with pests. So far, in this piece of the land, we never ever sprayed any type of pesticide, neither for olive fly or anything else. There was no need for it. I'll come back to that as well. So this is what we work on. It's a typical Troodos soil. It's quite unique in the world, and I think we have a geologist here that can confirm that. It's an upper pillow lava. It's basically basaltic rocks. It's a difficult soil to work with because it's actually not soil, it's just rocks. And you can see right on top, you typically have less than 1 centimeter of topsoil. Most of the crop that we eat every day needs at least 15 centimeters of topsoil to come back to it. So in agroecology, we are seeing the farm as an ecosystem. We're trying to design productive ecosystem. And I will explain a bit more, but what we're doing, it's basically biomimicry. We're trying to observe how nature works. We get from those observations a set of principles, and from those principles, we base our actions. So it's just very, very, very simple. It's not rocket science. The complexity is in the amount of factors that comes in. But the first thing we do, we don't really grow olive trees. We're trying to grow soil. Our focus, our work, everything we're doing is to grow soil. The olive trees is a byproduct of our soil. Here, there's no soil. It's just rocks. So what we're doing, we're trying to create it. But it's very important to understand what is the soil situation in the world. And it's important to understand because the type of agriculture we're doing is the only type of agriculture that will be able to sustain humanity for the next 100 or so years. Because we are losing our soils everywhere in the world, very, very, very fast, and it gets faster and faster. You know, it's a perverse cycle, and it gets faster. Here I have some data from the US Department of Agriculture. Every year we lose 75 billions of topsoil. This is where we grow our food. We have a population increasing, we need to grow more food, and we're losing our soils. So we're going to be, and we already are facing huge, huge difficulties. 33% of the land where we grow food is experience that desertification. So that's directly, as it is today, 1 billion people. And this comes from the way we are using agriculture, and this comes from the way we've been using agriculture forever. There's no example of human history of sustainable agriculture. Agriculture has always been destructive, always. We kept repeating the same pattern and pattern of destruction over time in all history. Agriculture is debatable, but it's generally admitted that it started in Mesopotamia in what we call the Fertile Crescent. Well, have a look now. It's Iraq, Syria, and Iran. It's basically deserts. Those used to be extremely fertile, extremely green. What happens is we've been destroying our soils, and we've been destroying our soils by many different means, but the main one is tilling. Every time we till our soil, we are destroying its structure, and we're destroying the life in it. It's very simple. Every plant, to feed itself, very, very, very rarely takes element directly from the soil. Most of the time, 99% of the time, it's a trade. So there's a wide variety of microorganisms in the soil, from the bacteria to the nematode to the fungus, etc., etc. Every time a plant needs something, it will exudate a little sugar that will attract the microorganism that will bring that something. So if the plant needs calcium, he is going to use the carbon from the atmosphere through photosynthesis, because most of the product of photosynthesis is for the root system, not for the growth of the plant. That's the vast majority is to feed the soil. So I need calcium. I'm going to make that little sugar, that little exudate, that tastes so good that this bacteria that brings me calcium will come, give me calcium, I give a bit of sugar. So the life in the soil, it's a constant trade. It's the most complex organism, ecosystem on the planet. We know very little of it, very, very, very little of it, because since the synthetic fertilizer revolution, we came really big after the Second World War, it started before that, we found out that if you create salts of N, P, and K, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, you can dilute that with water and give it to the plant. So the plant has no choice but to drink it, and it will grow, but it's going to grow weak. It's just like if we feed ourselves just with sugar, fat, and protein pure. We're missing all the micronutrients that makes us healthy. It's like us being on IV all the time and living like this. That's what we do when we use chemical fertilizer. And when we use chemical fertilizer, we're using salts. So we're creating our soil more salty, and we have production boost, because those salts are killing the microorganisms that are in the soil, and those microorganism bodies are basically made of nitrogen. So the first few years, you see a boost in production, but generally you're going to lose your soil.